We're recording. Perfect. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to do a slow start as people continue to trickle into this webinar. But for everyone who has joined us, thank you so much for joining. We are really excited. This is our final webinar of our admission cycle. This is an Ask Admission webinar, and we are joined by our Software Systems and Cybersecurity program, our newest program. So the way that the webinar today will pan out is we will do about 20 minutes of discussing our general application requirements, our important dates and deadlines, and then we will pass it along to the program so that you can all learn a little bit more about our exciting new program that we are offering. And then there will be plenty of time to answer any questions you have live. So just a couple of housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded, so we are going to put it on our YouTube channel. Don't feel like you have to take notes during this session. You can always go back to review it. While you're on our YouTube channel, maybe rewatching this, you can see a couple of our other webinars from other programs, from other events we've hosted. And then throughout the session, as I said, we will be doing a Q&A session at the very end. But if you have questions throughout the session, please don't feel like you have to wait until the end. You can put any questions you have into the Q&A portion of the Zoom on the bottom of your screen. And I have some engineering coworkers on the back end who will help answer questions. And then anything that is probably best answered live, we will answer them at the very end. So please feel free to continue asking questions as the session goes on. Perfect. So at Penn Engineering, we have a number of master's programs. You can see them all here, but today's event is really just going to be highlighting our Software Systems and Cybersecurity program. As I mentioned, it's our newest program. We're so excited. This is the first application cycle. So we're really excited to welcome in our new group of engineers. So a little bit about the University of Pennsylvania as a school. So Penn was founded way back when in 1740, and then about 100 years after that, in 1850, Penn Engineering was founded as a school within the University of Pennsylvania. Penn has 12 graduate schools across the university, so Penn Engineering is only one of those 12 schools, which allows for a lot of great collaboration across graduate students. We have multiple master's programs, we have multiple PhD programs, and we are kind of continuing to grow and expand as the market changes. We have 19 different research centers and institutes across campus. So we are always doing research in any type of area you could imagine. Some of the most common areas right now are, of course, artificial intelligence, robotics, and healthcare engineering. As a Penn student, you have access to really incredible resources as a Penn student and then beyond once you graduate from Penn. So there are a lot of great opportunities on campus in terms of academic opportunities, libraries, centers for affinity groups, multiple fitness centers. So Penn really does a great job of making sure that you are supported in a really holistic way, not just in the classroom, but beyond. Penn Engineering also has our very own career services department and office. So when you're a student, as you're getting ready to transition from student to getting a job, we help you in all aspects of that, whether it's interview prep, resume writing, even looking for jobs and where to search for jobs. But the coolest thing about that is that is an opportunity that stays with you even after you graduate from Penn. So in 20 years after you have graduated from your program and you want to maybe look for a new job or career change, pivot, you can still utilize all of those great career services opportunities. They stay with you forever. And then I would be remiss, of course, if I didn't mention that something that makes the University of Pennsylvania so special is that it is located in such an exciting and innovative city of Philadelphia. So for those of you who don't know, Philadelphia has a ton of different nicknames, one of which is the city of brotherly love. It's the sixth largest city in the US. It is a city that is really rich with history, art, culture, educational opportunities. There is truly always something going on in Philadelphia every weekend, no matter what. And another really wonderful thing is that Penn is obviously a huge school in the city of Philadelphia, but there are a number of other large, both undergrad and graduate institutions throughout the city and then beyond in the Philadelphia suburbs. So it's a really wonderful place to kind of begin and continue your educational journey. Philadelphia is still has an affordable cost of living, certainly compared to some other East Coast cities, namely New York and Washington, D.C., but we're really close to those cities as well. So we are about 2 hours south of New York City and then 2.5 hours north-ish of Washington, D.C. We have really accessible public transportation. It's called SEPTA, and a lot of students, while they live on or right near campus, there's a lot of really great neighborhoods that students will also live in and easily commute to campus, because campus is really easy to get to via public transportation. Philadelphia is also, I think, part of what makes it so unique is that we have really beautiful parks and outdoor space. So sometimes cities can feel very much like cities and very metropolitan, which is awesome. But sometimes you miss the trees and the nature. And Philadelphia does really offer that. Fairmount Park is the largest urban park system in the world. So if you're someone who's interested in mountain biking, hiking, horseback riding, trail running, anything you can imagine, there's a really great opportunity for you in Philadelphia. And then in the past decade or so, I would say that Philadelphia has really expanded and continues to expand as a city with really great job opportunities in the tech and engineering industry, especially right around campus. And Penn Engineering does a really good job of building a community across all of our Penn Engineering programs. So obviously we have a lot of programs, but we want to make sure that you feel at home here, even if it's for a short amount of time. So there's a couple different opportunities that are specific to Penn Engineering students. There's a graduate student engineering group that really help to kind of plan events and make sure that the voices of engineering graduate students are being heard. There's a Dean's Doctoral Advisory Board specific to our PhD students that really have a lot of meetings with the dean and higher level leadership. We have a Cora Ingram Center, graduate OAS staff. So these are offices that really, again, want to support you holistically and make sure that you are excelling academically, but also emotionally and mentally as well. And so we have a really great opportunity for students to meet with advisors really regularly. So we never want you to feel like you don't have access to academic advisors or those that can really assist you throughout your time as a student. And then there's a couple of other cool opportunities that go beyond just you as a Penn Engineering student. But again, I mentioned that engineering is one of 12 graduate schools across the university. So I think it's really important for students who come here to network and collaborate with students across the other 12 graduate schools as well. So we have a graduate and professional student assembly, which we call GAPSA. And this group is really here for all graduate students across the university. So making sure that student needs are being met, are being heard at the graduate and professional level. We have a graduate student center on campus, which is literally a building with events that is specific to only graduate students. You can only get in if your ID shows that you are a graduate student. And then for our students who are coming from other countries, we have our International Student and Scholar Services Office, and they are here with you from the start of the I-20 process until you graduate and help you with OPT, CPT, any visa-related issues that might come up. You get a specific advisor who sticks with you through your entire tenure as a student. Now, I want to talk a little bit about application requirements, especially for this new program, and kind of what to expect if you have either maybe just started an application or are going to start it soon. So everything that we do first and foremost is through our online application. So we don't send anything in the mail. We don't really operate in mail. We try to do as much as we can online. So the first step is to start the online application. And within that is a resume is required, a personal statement is required, letters of rec, a $90 application fee, transcripts, and if applicable, English proficiency scores. And I will talk a little bit about all of these pieces in more detail. But I also want to just add, it often stresses a lot of students out, but the GRE score is optional. It is not required. So if you haven't taken it at this point, there's likely not enough time to take it in time to submit your application. So don't let that stress you out, please. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through a couple of the areas of the application that we get the most questions on, and try to just make sure it's as clear as possible. So our personal statement, we ask a number of different prompts, and we ask that you respond to them in 2 pages or less. And we want you to answer all of the prompts. It's really not, either or the prompts that you want to answer. We ask them all really specifically, so we want you to answer all of them. We also ask that you be mindful of the font size that you use. So please don't try to cram in all of your answers with a really small sized font. Aim for 11 or 12, any kind of font that's easy to read. If you can't read it, then our office probably can't read it, and we'll have to reach out to you to get a different copy of that. And I know that transcripts can sometimes be really tricky, so I want to outline our policy here just so that you're aware. So for the application review process, unofficial transcripts from any and all schools that you have attended are sufficient. So you do not need to submit official transcripts. You do not need to have transcripts evaluated for the application review process. Please note that especially when thinking about unofficial transcripts, they do have to include your name, the school's name, all of the courses that you've taken, and the grades that you've earned. So we've kind of been seeing that some unofficial transcripts unfortunately don't have your name or the school's name, and we have to make sure that your transcript is from you and matches your application as a whole. So just be mindful of that when you're collecting all of your documents. And if your unofficial transcript is not in English, you do have to have your transcript either evaluated or use a translation service. You don't have to get it evaluated if your transcript is in English, but please note all documents do have to come to us in English for us to be able to review them. And if you've studied outside of the US, then you will need to provide a grading scale that outlines your school's grading scale, especially if it's different than the more traditional or than the kind of US equivalent of a grading scale. So just be mindful of that as you submit your application, our office might be reaching out to you to collect some of those documents if we see that they're not included in what you've already submitted. And then official transcripts are only required if you've been admitted and plan to matriculate into the program. For letters of recommendation, you can submit up to 3 letters, but 2 letters are required. So we suggest 1 be academic in nature, 1 be professional in nature. Of course, if you've been out of school for a number of years, you can absolutely substitute your academic letter for a more professional one. That's no problem. And especially now, it's really important to begin having these conversations as soon as possible with your potential recommenders. Make sure that they're agreeing to write you a positive letter of recommendation. Make sure that they'll be able to submit it by the deadline as well. We do see a lot of short, unenthusiastic letters, which are probably not going to strengthen your application. And we don't require that your letters of recommendation be on professional letterhead, but whenever that's a possibility, it's always the best practice. And as I had said, the GRE is not required for any of our programs, but if you want to submit your scores, if you have scores, they do have to be official and they have to be sent directly from ETS. Our score code is 2888. It's also on our website. And they have to be valid, which means they have to be taken within the past 5 years. The GRE can be a really good option if maybe you've been out of school for a really long time, maybe you struggled a little bit in undergrad and want to supplement some lower grades. It can be a great opportunity to supplement that. And possibly the place we get the most questions are English proficiency scores and waivers. So any applicants that are non-US citizens and whose first language is not English are expected to submit English proficiency scores. So we accept the 3 major English proficiency tests, which are TOEFL, IELTS, and Duolingo. I've listed here the suggested minimum scores for those tests. Again, they're just suggestions, but they tend to be the scores of students that excel and do the best in our classes. Many of you will probably, if you are expected to submit these scores, you'll probably have a waiver applied to your application. So you would get an English proficiency waiver if you meet the following criteria. So if you are in or are going to graduate from a school, from a program in the US, or from a school in a country where English is the official language, or if your transcript states that the medium of instruction is in English, and that's clearly indicated, then we would waive that requirement as well. Please note that these are processed manually after you submit your application. So it does take a little bit of time for our office to process your application, make sure you meet the criteria, and then waive that application for you. So please be patient if you think that you are eligible for a waiver. All right, and important dates and deadlines. So March 15th is the application deadline for this program. Please be mindful, it's a little bit of a different deadline than the majority of our other programs. Our other programs the application has since closed. So you'll be able to submit your application until March 15th for this program. And then you can expect all of your decisions to be released by April 15th as well. And with that, I am going to pass it along to the program.
Awesome. Let me share this real quick. All right, yes, can you see this? All right, cool. So let me tell you a bit about this new program. So this is me and Mike. We're going to run this together, and we're really excited about this. So we work on cybersecurity, right? This is a really exciting area because there's a lot of need and a lot of motivation for this, right? So every day, like when you do things like you get in your car, you make a phone call, like you go to an ATM, like use the internet, you use a smartphone, all of those things. Every single time you use like massive kind of distributed systems and lots of computers in the background. There's a lot of infrastructure out there. It's very critical because it runs all these things that we're using every day. And all of this infrastructure is under constant attack. Okay, and so usually we're pretty good at defending these systems, but more often than we would all like, these attacks do succeed, right? And when they do, the damage can be very substantial, right? So cybersecurity is an important area because it really helps us defend these important systems. Now, there's sort of a couple of different ways to do this, right? Sometimes people do security in a more reactive way. Somebody breaks into the system, and then we discover that they did that. Like there's an illustration on the slide, and then we try to fix the damage and plug the hole and then move on. And this is obviously not ideal, right? We'd rather stop people before they get into the system. So we could use a more proactive approach, right? Where we have our system and we try to put up defenses as much as we can, right? So to keep more people out. And this is obviously better, right? So because we have strong defenses, we can get people out. But still, it's sort of like a situation where security is an afterthought, right? And so we're going to have a system that has structural vulnerabilities in it, and so it's going to be difficult to defend, right? Just like a Swiss cheese with a lot of holes in it. And so what we'd like to do is build systems from the ground up with security in mind, right? So like the illustration on the right, where you just sort of when you design a system and you start building the system and you implement the system, like at all of these points in the process, you think about security, and you put the defenses in place. And so that makes it very kind of easy and successful to defend these systems. Now, what do you need to know? Right, so obviously you do need to know about security. So, there's things like, how do you think about the threat? Like what kind of attacks might be possible? What kind of defenses might you have? What kind of building blocks can you use in your defense? So these are all important things to know. It's important to sort of have the right mindset, right? So when you make a design decision, you think about like what might the attacker do and as a consequence of that. So this is all very important, but at the same time, it's also important to understand the actual systems themselves, right? Because like like a real system, for instance, like a search engine or like a massive kind of web front end like Amazon's, is a really complicated system behind the scenes. And that the illustration you see is actually from the original paper that Bernard Page wrote about the Google search engine way back in 1998. And you can see even then, sort of, it had lots of different moving parts and components that all interact with each other. And if you have a system like this that you need to defend and you really don't understand it all the way down, it can be really, really difficult to defend it, right? And so it's important to understand sort of like what kinds of trade-offs you have to make when you build a system like this, and to have a realistic sense of what you can do as a defender and what the various costs are, right? So the best defenders, in some sense, are the ones that not just know security, don't just know software systems, but really know both of these things together, right? And this is what motivated this new degree program where we're hoping to teach you both of these things at the same time so you can really get the best of both worlds. Now, why is this a master's degree, right? And so let me tell you a little bit about why like we think that you need kind of a substantial like amount of knowledge beyond just like taking a single security class, right? And the reason is that this area constantly evolves, right? So a lot of areas, like you learn a thing once, like an LR1 posture, and then you can use that, and it's going to be good for a long time, right? But in security, we're up against smart, adaptive human adversaries, right? It's not just software bugs, it's not just hardware breaking or something like this. These are people who are out there to get you. They're trying to get into your system, and they're going to do whatever it takes within their power, right, to get in, right? And so they're constantly going to come up with new attacks. They're going to be very creative. They're going to be very smart, right? And so as a result, we on the good side have to keep coming up with new defenses, right? So it's not at all a static area. There's constantly new things that are happening. And so because of that, we can't just sort of teach you like, oh, here are the 20 different defenses that you have to know about, and you just go and apply those. You have to be able to defend, to come up with new defenses all the time, right? So you keep an eye on what the bad guys are doing, and then you come up with a new defense, right? So textbook knowledge is, you have to know, you have to have that as a foundation, but it's not going to be enough, right? And so, first of all, it's going to evolve. Like in a second, it's like every system is different. You have to really understand for the particular system that you have what your options are. Right? It's because of that, it's not enough for us to give you a fish, right? We need to teach you how to fish, right? And that means that we have to give you a whole constellation of different skills that you have to use to be able to keep up with the bad guys out there, right? And so yes, like if you have taken a single security class, that's great, right? And it's going to give you sort of a basic understanding of security. But if you want to do is sort of take a leadership role in defending these systems, you have to know more than that. Now, and so people are realizing this. This is the good news, right? So people know that they need somebody with these skills. And so when you look at job postings, there's a lot of demand for this kind of knowledge. And so oftentimes it's called security engineer or something in that nature, right? And they're going to usually say, look, the person has to be really strong in security, but they also have to be a really strong software engineer and have to know how to build these systems, right? And you can see these job ads all over the place, right? So all the major players that we looked at, including the ones here on the slide, have jobs out there like this. And I've personally interacted with some of these folks while I was on leave at Roblox. So they're great. So what is the job like? Okay, and so I know a little bit about this, because I've been working in this area for a while. So they're really good jobs, right? This is a highly skilled position. You're gonna have good compensation. You're gonna, it's good in that sense for sure, right? But it's also a really exciting job, right? Because this is not a bore. I don't want to say bad things here, but like it's not like you're just coding all day long. you come in the morning and the bad guys have done something, and now you have to sort of figure out like what is it, what is going on. You sort of, it's a bit like Sherlock Holmes, right? You look into the system, you try to figure out what it is that needs to be done. How can you build new defenses? You're sort of strategizing with the engineering teams. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on, so it's not going to be boring for sure. It's also like, it's good to be on the good side, right? This is a position where like, you're not just building something, which is great too, but you're actually like, there are bad guys out there, they're out there to get us, and we're like on the team that defends the system. So this is attractive. I personally like that. And then finally, it's not a job where you have to worry about, one day you're just sort of done, and then everybody goes home and your job is obsolete. That is not going to happen because the bad guys are going to come up with new attacks all the time. And so there's always going to be a need for a defender. Right? So this is not a job that is going to be done anytime soon. So what do you need to know? Well, so if you want to, so hopefully at this time you're sort of excited about this and it's like, what do I need to do to get started on this? What do I need to know? And to be set up for success in this program, you will have to know the basics already, right? Because we want to talk about advanced stuff, so we can't repeat the basics. And about all the basics, you have to have good mathematical foundations, right? Because we're going to be talking about crypto and things like that. So like some discrete math, logic, things like that, you already have to know. Same thing is probably in statistics. This plays a large role in security because you generally have to think about risks and probabilities a lot, right? So there's lots of things you could do, if you only had infinite money and infinite time and infinite resources, but you generally won't have those things. And so you have to make decisions based on risk and probabilities. Then you have to be able to program, right? You don't have to be a complete like hacker and have to build like large systems. That's not necessary. But sort of basics, you have to know like at least one programming language. That would be really useful. Um, Basic algorithms, data structures, and some software building engineering skills. Like if you have built something like non-trivial, that would be really good. Now, do you have to have a computer science degree or something like this? Like if you have something like this, like ESE or information science, something like this, you almost certainly have all of those skills already. But the goodness is that even if you don't have a degree like this, you may still be ready for this program, right? But in this case, you'd have to sort of have a closer look at your transcript and see like, the courses that you've taken, do they cover these basics? And, if they do, right, that's okay, right? All we need is to make sure that we have a good starting position. Now, what are you going to learn? Okay, and so there's a lot of things that you have to know to succeed in this position. We're going to have lots of exciting courses that cover them all. Like there's obviously the foundations of security. Like you have to basically be able to put on the hat of the adversary and think about like, what am I going to do to break into the system? Right? So it's sort of like a mindset. We're going to talk about current threats, right? Once again, like these change all the time, but it's still useful to understand that all the different kinds of things that can happen to your system, all the different kinds of attacks that people are trying. We're going to look really deeply into system design, like all the way at the bottom, right? How does the network protocol work? How does the machine work? Like how do we structure a system like this, distributed systems, concurrency, all that stuff. Then we'll look at threat modeling, like, how do you think about the adversary? Like, is the adversary going to be a foreign secret service? Is the adversary a script kiddie in their bedroom? Who is the adversary? And like, what are we going to do about them? We're going to look at crypto because this is a lot of foundation for modern security. We're going to look at risk-based analysis and decision making. Like I said, you generally can't afford to do all the things you could do, so you have to make a choice. We'll do a lot of attack work too. Like you have to understand how the stuff works. So we'll do penetration testing. We're going to break into some example systems that we set up for you. We're going to look at vulnerabilities, how to find them, how to patch them, how to get rid of them. We'll do software development. That's because later on you're going to have to work with the actual teams that build these systems. Strong communication skills and generally soft skills are super important, right? Because you have to get things done, right? So it's not enough to know what to do. You also have to get others excited and get them to do them. And finally, just sort of operations, like how does security work in practice? We're going to look at these things as well. Now, you might be asking, like, what about AI? Like this is obviously like changing a lot of things. And so the question is like, how does it affect security? And so yes, like AI is affecting things. Like AI is going to be used to build a lot of the software that you're going to be defending. It's going to be a part of lots of applications, and this is often a good thing. But it's also creating new interesting risks for security, right? Because the bad guys have AI too, right? So the AI can help them find vulnerabilities. And AI itself sort of has interesting kind of, I want to say weaknesses, like, it has things that an attacker can do to them. as you've probably seen in the news once in a while. So this is another dimension that the program has, and we're gonna, talk about those things. There are going to be courses you can take that sort of, bring you up to speed on AI and also from a security perspective. And we also have a center here at Penn, the Asset Center for Trustworthy AI, where people are actually actively researching these challenges, especially also with security in mind. And so that might be an opportunity for you to get engaged in research. Now, you might say like, okay, this is exciting, but why don't I just, take a regular master's degree in computer science? Like, why do I have to have a special degree? And yes, you can take some of these classes with a regular degree as well. But for the current cybersecurity, there are going to be some requirements in a regular master's degree that maybe are not super critical for this particular path, right? For instance, computer architecture, like depending on what you want to do, this may not be the thing that you need the most for security. On the other hand, there are things that you really do need that the regular master's degree is not going to require, right? And so like we really put these requirements together so that you are going to be set up for a career in this field, and you will know all the things that you need. And then finally, when you apply for jobs, and it's good to have a specific credential so that you can demonstrate that you know about this particular field and not just about computer science in general. So what does the curriculum look like? And so we structured this basically in four buckets with one sort of extra thing at the bottom, right? So there is because we're studying two things like software systems and cybersecurity, right? So there's two big buckets where we're going to take classes in those particular areas. And they're going to be interconnected. Like, even the software systems course is going to have security in them, and the cybersecurity courses are going to talk a little bit about the systems. Then there's going to be technical electives, so you can specialize a little bit and gain some depth beyond the basic courses, and then some general electives, because there's sort of lots of cool courses here at Penn, and you might find some courses that sort of round out your degree, or maybe other things that you're excited about, and so you can take those as well. And then depending on how much programming background you have, there is one course that you can take to sort of, remind you how that works and sort of maybe fill any gaps you may have. And so that can count as a technical elective. So I'll go into these details a little bit more in a moment. So in the software systems core, you can first like take this programming class that I just mentioned, right? So to get up to speed again, that can count as a technical elective later. And then you take three out of those four classes that we have in those slides. So Internet and Web Systems is my own class. I'm going to talk more about this in a moment. There's the Software Systems class, a Networked class, and an OS class. Right? And all of those are going to teach you sort of how to really go in depth in a large complex software system, so you can really understand what the bad guys are doing and why they are able to do them. This is just briefly about my own class. So it's basically an advanced distributed systems class. So you're going to see all the topics that you would expect here. Like we're going to talk about massive scale systems, like how do you build a system for billions of people potentially. Really like the complications that go along with this, like how do you achieve consistency? How do you make it so that the system never goes down? Like I ask my class always, like, have you ever seen Google down ever? And people never say anything, right? Because it's just incredibly reliable. How do you make something like this happen when like every computer that you have seen can break sometimes? And we're going to really look at how do you understand a system like this all the way down. We're going to use web search as a case study. We're going to build like an entire kind of search engine over the course of the semester. It's not going to be as fancy as Google itself, right? But it's going to be pretty good. We're going to have lots of components. You can see them here at the right. Like you build your own little web server, your own little key value store, like a little Spark with like a small subset of the features and a crawl indexer front end. And at the end, you can not only sort of have you really studied all the different aspects of the system, you also have a running system that you can show to people and say like, look, I built all of this myself, every single line of code. So, it's a fun class. I like it. Students tend to like it. Then on the security side, we have three courses that we'd like you to take. There's one about computer network security. That's an important basis. There's a crypto course because that, once again, like a lot of security involves crypto in some shape or form. And then there's a security course about systems engineering management that ties it all together. And then we're working on more options in this particular area. So stay tuned for that. Here's an example from the second area, right? So it's the computer network security class. And so that really kind of focuses on like, how do you think about a defender? How do you think about an attacker, right? And there's a lot of projects where like they actually attack a real system, like do some real exploits, like put in some real defenses and see how that works. right? For instance, this reverse engineering, how do you find vulnerabilities in a piece of software? Um, how do you kind of compromise crypto, right? So crypto, when it's not implemented correctly, is also vulnerable, and you can the interesting things you can do. And we're going to attack real software, right? So current versions of browsers to see how the adversary is going to do that. Then there's the technical elective category. And so here, like you can pick two additional technical courses. And we have lots of things on the menu here, right? So you can look more at, you know, wireless networks, you can look more at databases, you can look more at blockchain systems, whatever you're interested in. And so the goal here really is to gain depth and to specialize a little bit. There's also a capstone course where you can sort of, do a project at the very end so that brings all of these skills together. Then there's a general elective category where you can basically take any two CIS or ESE or ES courses at the graduate level. And there's a lot of options, as you can probably imagine. Like if you want to learn more about AI, or if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship, there's a strong program here as well. If you want to do a startup or something like this, that could be really valuable, and lots of other things you could do. Right? So these are just examples. And then finally, beyond the courses themselves, I want to point out that there's a lot of opportunities also to get involved in research. Right? So we have a new center, the Schlein Center for Cybersecurity, that is associated with this program. And there's a lot of faculty members from all over the university that are involved in this program. And as you can see, these are not just folks here in engineering. There are folks from the law school. There are folks from, the social SPP, like the policy folks. There's a lot of different people from all corners of campus, even practitioners. Like the head of our information security department is here as well. And so they're all going to work on interesting research problems together. And you can be part of that if you would like to. All right, so to quickly summarize, this is a new program, we're excited about it. And what it's meant to do is really to prepare you for a leadership role in cybersecurity, right? And you can be the person who works with this with an engineering team to really build a system that is strong and easy to defend against attacks. I've shown you a couple of career paths that you can take with this program, or we're hoping you're going to be prepared for. The goal is really it's either you're a recent graduate or you can be a mid-career professional, and you've sort of seen the requirements we have. You don't have to have a computer science degree, but if you have one, that's great. And then we have this both on campus and online. We've seen the requirements, and that's really it. Please do come join us, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I know anyone who's had their as small as having their email hacked, as large as having their own identity hacked. I'm excited to have more good guys on the case, or good people on the case as much as possible, because it's only, I think, going to grow more and more as we become just more tech forward as a society. So I do have a couple questions that have come in throughout the session, and then a couple that were pre-submitted. So the first question that came in live was from someone who has a business degree, but they did take computer science and math courses and will have all the course requirements listed. So are they still qualified to apply to the SSC program?
So as long as you have the things that we listed that I talked about earlier, I think that should be perfectly fine. But so there's a lot of folks out there who have taken other degrees, but then maybe have a minor computer science and have taken all the courses that we need. That is perfectly fine, but you'll know all the things that we need to build on. It doesn't have to have computer science in the actual degree.
Great, thank you. And then this came in as you were presenting of who or how is it determined who needs the foundation courses?
So I don't think we have a placement test or anything like this yet, but so basically right now I would imagine it's mostly self-assessment, right? So you can have a look at some of the things we're going to do, right, and see whether your coding skills are recent enough and complete enough to take that on. And if you feel that maybe you could use a refresher, or maybe it's just useful to take this class, then you can do that. I think that there's sort of not, I don't think we've had a formal process for deciding that. But there is a replacement exam that we have in the other degree program, so maybe we'll add that later.
Great, perfect. And I'll give you, Andreas, just a second to breathe and maybe have a sip of water. A question came in, I think that's more admissions related, so I just want to address that if you've already submitted an application to maybe one of our other programs, CIS, really any of our other programs, you can still definitely apply to the SSC program as well. So the application is open. You can start a new application. And if you have already submitted an application with us, a lot of your information will be pre-populated. So it will save you a little bit of time. That's also true if maybe you've applied to one of our other programs and already received a decision. You're more than welcome to still apply for the SSC program. Many of our applicants apply for more than one program at totally normal, totally fine. So we would definitely encourage you to do that as well. All right, and then a couple of the pre-submitted questions. Can you talk a little bit about what makes our program different from other cybersecurity or systems-focused master's programs?
Right. So I think this is actually goes to the same in the same direction as the Schlein Center slide earlier, right? So I think what we're really good at Penn here is to integrate different directions, like to collaborate across areas. So for instance, in my own research, I've worked with folks from the law school, from the med school, folks from social security policy and practice, folks from Wharton, and so we're really good at sort of breaking down these barriers. And I think this is where a lot of the big challenges are for security, right? So oftentimes security isn't just a technical problem where like you can write 10 lines of code and then that fixes the thing. It's like people are not using it correctly. Like this is a usability question there. You know, there are kind of external factors that determine like who the adversary is going to be and who do you have to think about. There are economic factors behind it. There's a whole exciting area. Like if you think of Wharton, for instance, there's a whole exciting area about the economics of security, like, you know, where's the market for these attacks and things like that. There's a lot of exciting stuff there. And I think at Penn are really, really good at connecting these things together.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the benefits of a school like Penn is that collaboration across so many different centers and schools across the university. Can you share an example or two of the types of problems or projects students might work on in this program?
Yeah, so I think so we have a lot of so depending on what kind of project we're talking about, right? So it could be like a capstone project, like where you're building something, or it could be more like a research project. So maybe I'll talk about the research project since this is like something we currently have going on, right? So there's a lot of like security challenges that are happening, right? So like we have a lot of research projects going on that are working defenses, and this is something that you could definitely participate in. But so, for instance, right now I have a project myself where like there's this particular kind of attack where people trigger your system to go into a bad state and remain there like for a long time period of time. We're actually working with like a number of students on a defense, right? And this is something that you could definitely do if you once you have the necessary foundations and contribute.
Cool. Great. And can you talk a little bit about how this program prepares students for a world where AI tools are increasingly writing code?
Yes, right. So that can be so first of all, like, you know, obviously this is going to be connected very closely to AI, right? So you can take AI classes. AI is going to be in all of our classes as you would imagine, right? So this is going to be super important to know about security in a world where AI codes a lot of things because AI is not very good at defending systems right now, right? So it's a complex skill, right? So if you think of the slide earlier where I talked about the Google system with all these interacting components, I mean, it takes a lot of expertise and knowledge to reason about a system like this. And I think AI is certainly not there yet today, and I'm not sure how long it would take to get there, right? And so like it's going to make mistakes and not give you a system that is secure. And so it's all the more important, like I mean, people start building a lot of their systems with AI to really understand security, right? So in fact, this doesn't make this program less important. It makes it a lot more important if you ask me.
Right. Definitely. Let's see. Um, what skills are employers looking for today that this program is specifically designed to address?
So it's definitely strong foundations in both of the areas that we're addressing. This is sort of how we came up with this program, right? So people are saying, look, you know, you need to be able to understand the software engineering part, right? Because if you just sort of outside and say like, yeah, you should do something, and you don't understand sort of why like things are like that, it's not going to be good enough. On the other hand, you also obviously need the security foundations, right? These are the other things. And then, you know, you need good soft skills. So you need to be able to work with teams because the things that are kind of the security is never like one guy at his desk or like one woman at her desk. It's always going to be a large team, and so you need to figure out who to work with. You need to convince them. You need to present the threats clearly. That's to upper management. That's like how often have I gone to explain to people like, look, this is really important. Imagine what could happen. Like this is specifically what the risk is. This is what you should do. This is what your options are. These are all things that you need to be able to do. And the program is sort of we really worked hard to make sure we cover all of those bases.
Awesome. Definitely. What advice would you give to a prospective student deciding whether this program is the right next step for them?
So the thing that I tend to tell people is the first thing you have to ask yourself, are you excited about this area, right? Because if you're not excited about it, you're never going to be, yes, you could complete the program, but you're not going to be happy in this career, and you're not going to be good at it either, right? So if you look at these slides and say like, wow, this is amazing, like all these bad guys out there, I'm going to be in the good team, I'm going to defend these systems. Yes, I think this program is probably for you, and you should look at your coursework and stuff and see whether you're ready for it. And if not, you can get ready, but then it would be like recommending it. But if you're saying like, well, I'm not sure about this stuff, like doesn't sound so interesting, the salary part sounds good, but that's maybe not such a good starting position. But if you're excited about security, we'd love to have you.
Awesome. And my last question for pre-submitted questions are, looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what role do you see graduates of this program playing in shaping the future of software systems and cybersecurity?
So it's going to be a fast-moving field, right? And so who knows what the bad guys are going to be doing in 5 years, right? So all I know is we're going to be there. There's going to be attacks, lots of them, right? And there's going to be lots of systems we're going to have to defend, and there's new defenses we're going to have to build. There's new research we're going to have to do to find good defenses, and all of those things you can help to shape, right? Once we are a graduate of this program, because we're going to give you the foundations to like I said earlier, right? So not just go out and apply the things like the 17 techniques that we taught you, and you're going to sort of rubber stamp and deploy them, but you can actually develop new things, right? And to respond to this constantly evolving threat out there, right? I think that is sort of the role that I would imagine people would do.
Yes, constant threat indeed. So Andreas, those were all of the questions that we had come in. I want to say thank you so much for joining, and I know we're all very excited about this new program. So for anyone who maybe didn't get questions answered, or if your questions come in after the fact, as so often does, please feel free to send our office an email. In just a second, we'll put a slide up with our contact information. We are always in touch with the program, so we can relay any questions that you might have. And we look forward to having you submit your application soon. And again, if you have any questions throughout the application process, or if you're still unsure about what program you want to apply to, please reach out. But as you can see on the slide, on the screen now, we have an FAQ database that goes through all of a lot of what we talked about today in terms of application requirements. And there's the QR code to our YouTube page, so you can see this video, which will be up in just a couple of days, and a couple of our other videos as well. Our email is at the bottom of this slide, so if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.